Scene 1. The child's pure instinct. A quiet morning that changed everything. It was a quiet, peaceful morning in the countryside. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft, golden glow over the fields. Birds were singing gently in the distance. In the backyard of a small farmhouse, a little boy named Tommy, no older than 3, was playing alone, his tiny hands digging into the soft earth, completely absorbed in his own little world. He wasn't like other kids. While most children his age were drawn to loud toys and bright colors, Tommy had always been different. He had a natural gentleness, a connection to animals that his parents often noticed but never truly understood. He would stop to watch a butterfly for long minutes or talk quietly to the family's old cat, as if sharing a secret. But that morning, something changed. As Tommy played near the fence line of their property, his small face suddenly froze. His wide, innocent eyes narrowed, listening intently. There it was again. A faint sound. It wasn't the wind, nor the birds. It was a soft, pained whimper. His little heart thumped harder. He stood up slowly, his messy hair falling into his eyes. He turned his head, following the sound, instinct guiding his every step. There was sadness in that cry, fear, loneliness. Without hesitation, without fear, Tommy whispered softly, "Doggy." And in that instant, the world of this small boy was about to collide with something far bigger. A moment that would test the kindness in his heart and change lives forever. Scene 2. The heartbreaking discovery. Trapped souls behind the fence. Tommy's tiny footsteps padded softly across the grass, guided only by the faint whimpers that seemed to float through the morning air. His little hands gripped the wooden fence as he peered curiously through the gaps between the boards. What he saw on the other side made his young heart tighten in a way he didn't fully understand. 2 German shepherds. Their majestic bodies were pressed tightly together, trapped within a broken section of the old wire fence that separated the farmland from the nearby woods. The fence had twisted and curled around them like cruel metal vines, sharp, rusty wires biting into their fur, their skin leaving raw red marks of pain. One dog was larger, clearly older, with wise, tired eyes that still held a flicker of protectiveness. The other was smaller, thinner, younger, its soft eyes filled with terror. Their breathing was labored, their bodies trembling from exhaustion and fear. It was clear they had been struggling for hours, maybe all night, trying to free themselves. But no one had heard them, no one except Tommy. The little boy didn't run. He didn't scream for his parents. Instead, with innocent bravery only a child could possess, he knelt down beside the fence and whispered, "It's okay, doggies, I'm here." The older German shepherd lifted its head weakly, locking eyes with the boy. For a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. Trust. Pure, wordless trust. Tommy's tiny hands reached through the fence, gently brushing against the dogs' faces. They didn't pull away, they didn't growl. They knew, somehow, that this small human meant them no harm. He could see the pain in their eyes, but worse than that, he could feel their sadness, abandonment, desperation. Tears pricked the corners of Tommy's eyes. He didn't know how, but he knew what he had to do. "I'll help you," he whispered, his voice breaking. And with that simple promise, a new chapter began. A child's heart stepping into a world of pain, kindness, and courage far beyond his years. Scene 3. A child's compassion beyond fear, the first act of kindness. Tommy didn't hesitate. His little hands searched the ground, grabbing handfuls of grass and soft dirt, tossing them gently toward the exhausted German shepherds, as if offering them comfort, food, or simply his innocent kindness. But the dogs needed more than comfort. Tommy's eyes traced the cruel metal wires tangled around their legs and necks. The older dog had deep cuts on its shoulder. Dried blood clung to its fur. The younger one's breathing was shallow, its small body shaking with every frightened exhale. Most adults would have been too afraid to get close, but not Tommy. His heart didn't know fear. It only knew that someone was hurting. With trembling care, he pushed his tiny hands further through the gap in the fence, his fingertips brushing against the rusted wires. The sharp metal scratched his skin, but he didn't pull back.
"Don't be scared," he whispered softly, his voice like a lullaby. "I'm here now."
And then, as if understanding the boy's gentle soul, the older German shepherd did something extraordinary. It pressed its large, scarred head against Tommy's hand. A soft whimper escaped its throat, not from pain this time, but from relief. Tommy's heart swelled. A warm tear rolled down his cheek. He wasn't just looking at two dogs anymore. He was looking at souls. Wounded, forgotten, but still hoping. He began to untwist the wires with his small, clumsy fingers. The metal was cold, biting into his skin, but he didn't care.
"I'll save you," he promised in a whisper, the most sincere vow a child could ever make.
For a moment, time seemed to stop. A little boy with no strength, no tools, no plan, only love, sat beside two broken animals. And together, in that fragile space between innocence and suffering, something powerful was born.
Hope.
Hope in its purest, rawest form, flowing from a child's heart straight into the hearts of two forgotten creatures.
And nothing in the world is stronger than that.
Scene 4, a race against time, calling for help. With a heart full of fear, Tommy's tiny hands trembled as he struggled with the tangled wires, but no matter how hard he tried, the cruel metal wouldn't let go of the suffering dogs. His little fingers were too small, too weak against the rusted fence that had trapped them for so long. He bit his lip to stop himself from crying. The last thing he wanted was to scare them more. The older German shepherd nudged him softly, almost as if telling him it was okay, that they understood he was trying. But Tommy knew deep inside he needed help. Real help. He stood up, wiping the dirt and tears from his face with the sleeve of his little shirt. Turning back toward the farmhouse, he hesitated for a moment, afraid to leave them alone.
But he had to.
His tiny legs moved as fast as they could across the uneven ground, stumbling over roots and rocks, driven by something far bigger than himself. Love. His small voice echoed across the yard as he called out with all his might. "Mama, Dada, come quick, doggies need help, they're stuck." His parents, startled by the urgency in their son's voice, dropped what they were doing and rushed toward him. Seeing the panic in Tommy's eyes, they knew this wasn't one of his playful games. "Where, sweetheart, show us." Tommy didn't waste a second. He grabbed his father's hand, pulling him with surprising strength toward the fence line.
"Hurry, Daddy! They're hurting!" As they reached the spot, his mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock.
There, behind the fence, two broken souls lay waiting.
Wounded, afraid.
But not alone.
Not anymore.
Tommy had found them. And now hope was coming with him. Scene 5. The parents' shock. Realizing the depth of cruelty, Tommy's father, Mark, knelt down beside the damaged fence, his heart sinking the moment his eyes met the sight of the two trapped German shepherds. His hands instinctively reached out, but the sharp, rusted wires stopped him. "These poor dogs," he whispered, barely able to comprehend the pain and suffering before him. Beside him, Tommy clung tightly to his mother, Emma, his small hands gripping her dress with desperation.
"They're good doggies, Mama. They didn't bite. They're just scared," Tommy whispered, his little voice filled with innocence, but also wisdom far beyond his years.
Emma's eyes filled with tears as she examined the scene. The older shepherd had deep wounds along its neck and legs, the metal wires having cut into its flesh from hours, perhaps days of struggling. The younger one, barely more than a puppy, looked dangerously weak, its ribs showing through its dirty fur. But what struck Emma and Mark most wasn't just the injuries, it was the evidence of human cruelty. Someone had done this. This wasn't an accident. The wires were wrapped too tightly, too deliberately. The markings on their bodies were unmistakable signs of abuse. Mark clenched his jaw, anger and heartbreak rising within him. What kind of monster would do this? He muttered under his breath. Emma knelt down beside Tommy, pulling him close.
You were so brave, sweetheart, she whispered, kissing his hair. You saved them.
But Tommy shook his head.
No, Mama, they're still hurting. We have to save them for real.
Mark stood up, his voice steady with determination. We need wire cutters, a blanket, water. Emma nodded, already moving quickly toward the house. As Mark stayed beside the dogs, talking to them softly, trying to ease their fear, he realized this wasn't just about rescuing two animals. This was about restoring their trust in humanity.
And it had started with the pure heart of a little boy.
Scene 6. The Rescue. Breaking the chains of suffering. Mark returned moments later, his hands gripping a heavy pair of wire cutters, his heart pounding not from fear, but from urgency. Behind him, Emma carried blankets and a bowl of fresh water, while Tommy followed closely, his little hands clutching a small toy he always carried, as if hoping to comfort the frightened dogs with it. Mark knelt down beside the older German shepherd, speaking in a soft, calming voice. It's okay, buddy. We're going to get you out. The older dog, exhausted, wounded, locked eyes with him, as if silently saying, We trust you. Mark began cutting the twisted wires with slow, careful precision, making sure not to hurt them further. The metal groaned and snapped under the pressure, the cruel trap finally beginning to loosen its grip. Tommy stayed by the younger dog, holding out his toy, a little stuffed bear, whispering, It's okay, I'm here, you're safe now. The puppy, weak but sensing the boy's gentle heart, nudged its nose against the toy, a small, fragile sign of trust that melted Emma's heart. Bit by bit, the tangled fence gave way. When the final piece of wire was cut, Mark carefully lifted the older dog free, wrapping it in a soft blanket. Its body trembled, but its eyes, tired yet grateful, never left him. Emma followed closely, doing the same with the younger pup, whispering words of comfort. Tommy watched with wide, tear-filled eyes.
We did it, Daddy, he whispered.
Mark knelt beside his son, placing a strong hand on his shoulder.
No, Tommy, you did it. You found them. You saved them.
As they carried the dogs toward their home, away from the cruel fence that had almost claimed their lives, a quiet strength filled the air. It wasn't just a rescue. It was the breaking of invisible chains, fear, pain, abandonment, replaced now by hope, love, and the purest form of courage, that of a child's heart refusing to walk away. Scene 7. The healing begins, a safe haven for broken souls. Inside the farmhouse, the atmosphere shifted from fear to quiet tenderness. Emma and Mark carefully laid the two rescued German shepherds on soft blankets near the warm fireplace. The older dog groaned weakly, its body exhausted beyond measure, while the younger one whimpered faintly, curling into the folds of the blanket like a fragile leaf. Tommy sat cross-legged beside them, his little face filled with worry. "Will they be okay, Mama?" he asked, his voice trembling. Emma knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his small shoulders. "They're very weak, sweetheart," she answered honestly, "but they're safe now, and sometimes being safe is the first step to getting better." Mark gently cleaned the wounds with warm water, his hands steady but his heart aching. The older dog's cuts were deep, evidence of days of suffering, while the puppy had bruises and patches of missing fur, signs of neglect and fear. But despite their pain, neither dog showed aggression, only trust. It was as if they understood this home was different. Tommy, in his innocent wisdom, placed his small stuffed bear between them. "For you, so you don't feel lonely." Emma watched the scene with tears in her eyes. It wasn't just the dogs who had suffered. Tommy's heart had carried their pain too. As the fire crackled and the house filled with the soft sounds of breathing, broken but safe, a new chapter had begun. Mark called the local animal rescue center, explaining what happened. Help was on the way. But for now they waited, together. Tommy rested his small head beside the puppy, whispering gentle words only a child could speak. "You're gonna be okay. We're a family now." And in that moment, surrounded by warmth, love, and fragile hope, the healing truly began. Not just for the dogs, but for everyone in that room. Scene 8. Help arrives. A community touched by compassion. Not long after, the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway echoed through the quiet farmhouse. The local animal rescue team had arrived. A small group of volunteers who had seen many heartbreaking cases, but none quite like this. When they entered the house and saw Tommy sitting protectively beside the two injured German shepherds, something about the scene brought them all to a standstill. A child, no older than 4, with dirt-streaked cheeks, messy hair, and a heart larger than the world, had become the guardian angel of 2 forgotten souls. "This little guy found them tangled in a fence behind our property," Mark explained, his voice thick with emotion. "He wouldn't leave them." The lead rescuer, a kind woman named Sarah, knelt beside Tommy. "You did something very special today," she said gently. Tommy looked up, his big eyes serious. They were crying. "I had to help." Sarah smiled softly, her heart moved more deeply than words could say. Together with Mark and Emma, the rescue team carefully examined the dogs. Their injuries were severe, but their spirits, remarkably, remained unbroken.
"These dogs, they were meant to be found by someone like him," Sarah whispered to Emma.
They lifted the dogs onto stretchers, wrapping them in clean blankets, and prepared them for transport to the animal hospital. Tommy stood by quietly, clutching his little stuffed bear, watching with both hope and sadness. "Will they come back, Mama?" he asked softly. Emma knelt beside him. "Let's help them heal first, sweetheart. And if they don't have a home when they're better..." Tommy looked up hopefully. Maybe this can be their home," she finished. As the rescue truck pulled away, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time that day, bathing the yard in a soft golden light. And in the heart of a small boy who refused to look away from suffering, a promise had already been made. They were family now, no matter how long it took. Scene 9. Reunion. When hope finds its way home. Days turned into weeks, and not a single day passed without Tommy asking about the dogs. Every morning, he would look out the window toward the fence line where he had first found them, his small heart quietly waiting. Emma had kept in touch with Sarah from the rescue center, receiving regular updates. The older German shepherd, now named Max, had needed surgery for his wounds. The younger one, a female puppy they called Luna, had regained her strength slowly, learning to trust the gentle hands that cared for her. And then, one bright morning, a familiar truck rolled down the driveway. Tommy's heart nearly burst. "They're here! Mama, Daddy, they're here!" he shouted, running barefoot across the front yard, his little bear clutched in one hand. Mark and Emma followed, smiles breaking across their faces as Sarah stepped out of the truck, her eyes shining. "We have some friends who've been waiting to see you," she said. The truck door opened, and there they were, Max and Luna. But this time, they didn't look like the broken creatures Tommy had first found. Max stood tall, his scars a silent testament to survival, his eyes wise and kind. Luna bounded toward Tommy, her tail wagging so hard it seemed to shake her whole tiny body. Tommy dropped to his knees, his arms wide open.
"You came back. I knew you would."
Max approached slowly, his massive frame gentle as he lowered his head toward the small boy who had saved him. Luna pressed herself into Tommy's lap, her soft fur soaking in the love she had been starved of for so long. Sarah knelt beside them.
"They remembered you, Tommy," she said softly. "They never forgot who their little hero was."
Emma and Mark exchanged a look of quiet awe, knowing this moment was bigger than any of them. This was not just a reunion. It was the return of something rare and precious.
Trust, family, love.
And it had all started with the smallest voice refusing to walk away. Scene 10. A new beginning. The family they were meant to be that evening as the sun set behind the hills, casting a warm golden glow over the farmhouse. The Carter family sat together on their porch, no longer just three. Max lay beside Mark, his head resting on his strong hands, eyes peacefully half closed. Luna curled up in Tommy's lap, her tiny body rising and falling with each sleepy breath. The little stuffed bear, once a symbol of comfort, was now gently tucked between Luna's paws. Emma looked at her son, her heart full. "Do you know what today is, Tommy?" she asked softly. Tommy looked up, his face glowing with happiness.
"It's the best day ever."
Mark smiled. "It's the day our family grew." Sarah, standing nearby, couldn't help but feel her own eyes misting. "You didn't just save them, Tommy," she said quietly. "You saved a piece of all of us. You reminded us what kindness looks like." As the stars began to sparkle in the darkening sky, a gentle breeze swept through the yard, rustling the trees, like nature itself was breathing a sigh of relief.
Safe, loved, home.
Max let out a low, contented sigh, the sound of a soul finally at peace. Luna lifted her head, licking Tommy's cheek as if making him a forever promise, and Tommy whispered back words that needed no explanation. "You'll never be alone again, I promise." In that moment it was clear. This wasn't just a rescue story. It was a story of hearts finding each other across pain, across fear, and choosing love. It was the story of a little boy. And the two dogs who would never forget the day a tiny voice, filled with the biggest courage, found them in their darkest hour and brought them home.